Classroom of the Elite Volume 10. This volume had many interesting parts, and the special exam in this volume impacted the then Class B and C the most out of any of the previous exams. This was the first exam, where Ayonkoji's class didn't just go, oh happy-go-lucky, we don't know how but we won and we are not gonna question it and then go back to being useless. The whole class was affected after this exam, I mean it even prompted change from Kuenji, although it was for his various selfish reasons. So starting this volume review from the beginning, we first see a rather confusing monologue of Hirata, who is in a situation we didn't have much clue about. It was very interesting when he mentioned that to him his class was an important existence, not G's classmates. As in the peace and happiness of the class was more important to him than any selfish happiness of any particular person. If given a choice, he would rather have the whole class being just a little happy than have one person being extremely happy, even if that person was someone who interacted with him more than anyone else. The important thing here is Hirata's definition of friendship. He considers every one of his classmates as a precious friend, but in his mind they all are equally important to him. Which kinda beats the whole point of being friends. We can find any kind of cheesy definition of friendship from anime or shows, but if stripped to the bare minimum, friends are people who matter more to us than strangers. You wouldn't choose a stranger over your friends, but in Hirata's case he just doesn't think of anyone as a stranger. Even though he might not have ever interacted with some of his classmates. As someone once said, a friend to all is a friend to none. Basically what I am saying is, since he considers everyone friends of equal status, he might as well consider them all as strangers. I am gonna talk about his past with the full details a bit later in this video, but for now let's move along to the next chapter. And as the name of the first chapter suggests, the calm before the storm, the first chapter starts with Chabashira's sensei showing the test results to show the improvement in their class's performance. All is well and happy, nobody got failing marks. The two notable things about the results is, first the improvement of Sudo because of his study session with Horikita. Of course that shows both the growth on Sudo's part and on Horikita's part for spending much time teaching Sudo outside of their group study. I think it was mentioned somewhere that Sudo took one-on-one study session from Horikita on her room, which feels like a huge step for Horikita, who seemed to, or maybe still does, hate any kind of social interaction. The other notable thing was Yamuchi coming at the bottom of the class, confirming once again that he had nothing to contribute towards the class. Anyway, even so there was improvement in their class's average score and everyone was pretty satisfied. Even Chabashira sensei seemed a bit happy, thinking that this kind of gradual change was good for the class. And although she did warn the class about the special exam next week, she was still happy with the current morale of the class. Everything going like usual, Ayonkoji casually analyzing the class, praising Horikita only to be hit with the reply of "You can improve your score and I know so do it." There was also an interesting meeting before the storm hit. Ayonkoji met Nagumo and Manabu, completely by chance, and it seemed like Nagumo had also noticed the younger Horikita and had called upon Suzune, although she didn't stay there for long, so as not to embarrass her brother. The more important thing here though was the interaction between Nagumo and Ayonkoji, where firstly Nagumo insinuated that Ayonkoji was the one who spread the rumors about the other class, which led to Ichino's being saved. Which would mean he had to have realized that Ayonkoji was hiding his abilities, something he already suspected. But then he went on to say that the only reason Manabu was interested in him was not because of his abilities but rather because Ayonkoji was classmates with Suzune. Now I think someone smart like him should have figured out that not to be the case, especially after seeing the stuff exchange between the siblings. And after knowing more about his obsession with Manabu, I think it's safe to say that Nagumo felt jealous and because of his ego would rather believe that Ayonkoji and Suzune were in a relationship and hence Manabu was interested in him, rather than say that Ayonkoji was someone with enough capabilities that Manabu would pay more attention to him rather than to Nagumo himself. It's hard to say what Nagumo thinks of Ayonkoji, but if there is one thing for sure, it is that he doesn't think Ayonkoji is in the same league with him and Manabu. I mean, even in the future volumes his interest lies more towards Horikita, someone who is just related to Manabu rather than Ayonkoji. Of course we as readers know that Ayonkoji is a god who surpasses Manabu, but still I don't think Nagumo has even fathomed the idea of Ayonkoji being someone who surpasses Manabu. He acts like Manabu is the only one in all his life who has ever come close to being on his level, hence worthy of his attention, and so it makes me wonder what would happen if Nagumo ever found out about the true Ayonkoji. Would his obsession shift from Manabu to Ayonkoji? Anyways, back on track, Manabu makes some light comments about the upcoming third-year special exam, feeling confident like usual that he would just go and ace anything that comes his way. Suzune was called by Nagumo via a mysterious email, also offered the student council position just because of her being related to Manabu. Manabu was against this idea of forced nepotism and she quickly left. Later in the class she asked Ayonkoji about what they were talking about, but Ayonkoji is the ultimate wallflower. So as life goes on, shit hits the roof. Chabashira sensei delivered the bad news appearing gloomy. The class vote was an exam that was specifically placed to get Ayonkoji expelled, and of course he realized that his father must be involved in this out of the blue exam in one way or another. And so does Sakyongi, although in her case it was because she was contacted to help get Ayonkoji expelled. Of course, even though she was given a great opportunity to get rid of Ayonkoji, she didn't take it and rather helped him, because rather than to unfairly get him expelled, she wanted to clash with him and then defeat him. Now while we are talking about her, she did enforce a sick plan for Class A. Not expelling Katsuragi like she had said, but rather expelling his closest supporter Yahiko. And at that point almost everyone felt bad for Katsuragi, and it was kinda hard to not hate Sakyongi. Of course I don't hate her, the way she is around Ayonkoji is very wholesome, but if it's Katsuragi ever taking his revenge on her, and even if he manages to somehow prove her wrong and shatter her immense pride, I won't really feel bad for her. Sakyongi took much part in the voting happening outside her class too. First of all, she readied the tool that was Yamuchi that was being polished since the previous volume. She gave him instructions and had him choose Ayonkoji as the target to expel at this exam. She also met up with Ayonkoji, first of all hinting at the real reason why this exam was being held. They both knew the reason, although of course Ayonkoji, like always, played dumb. Secondly, she called of the bet she had made previously about them competing in the next special exam. Sakyongi proposed that this exam was not suited for them to compete with each other and postponed the bet until the next exam. She also assured him that she would not act against him in any way in this exam, giving both us and Ayonkoji, foreshadowing. Then there is the case with Class B, which had the toughest in this situation. Ichinos absolutely wouldn't let go of someone, and even if they had somehow gone along with the exam and voted out one of them, the unity of their Class B would have been disrupted. Class B's speciality was their absolute unity. With someone like Ichinos leading them, no one was going to be left out or treated to less than the other. That's what made them all believe and follow Ichinos. But in this case it came to bite their ass. Even their homeroom teacher, who I thought was kind of fishy and gave strong Kushida kind of vibes, was worried for her class. No point in creating pointless suspense in a review, so I am gonna talk all about their situation in one go. Ichinos' class had saves up around 16 million points, and Ichinos was desperate for more points and hence decided to ask the only person capable of helping her in that situation. And since Nagumo had long ago decided to make Ichinos her own personal property, he happily welcomed her desperate times and proposed a condition on lending 4 million points. She would have to date him. Now of course Nagumo's intentions are blindly obvious here, but the thing is, does Ichinos know about them, and if so, how exactly does she feel about them? I mean, personally I think she is clearly shown to be smart, and coupled with the fact that he did give Sakyongi the information about Ichinos' past, I don't think she trusts him or even idolizes him like she did in the past. But at the same time, nowhere in any volume has Ichinos ever said something bad about someone. She wasn't even that angry with Sakyongi considering what she did to her. So did she forgive and forget about Nagumo giving away the information about her past to Sakyongi? Cause in this volume, when talking with Nagumo on the phone call, she rather hesitantly asked him if he liked her. Anyway, the bottom line is, although I know the kind of super kind character Ichinos is, I would like her to at least stop looking up to Nagumo after all that's happened. Then of course our boy Ayonkoji finds out about the whole situation. Ichinos had been lying in wait to meet up with him after having the talk with Nagumo, having fallen for Ayonkoji's love me till you become a tool clever plan. Ichinos just wanted to soothe her heart by talking to him, and as they were talking, the amulet girl Asashina came up and discreetly told him about Nagumo's condition for lending Ichinos the points. Ayonkoji wasn't going to let a soon-to-be tool fall out of his hands that easily, so he did call Ichinos into his room at night to talk about the situation. There were some cute nervous romance moments, but at the end Ayonkoji wasn't really that eager to truly help, and Ichinos left feeling a bit better but still faced with the same hurdle. She found the condition ridiculous, but she still would have accepted it at the end, believing it was the right choice. Fortunately, Ayankoji and Ibuki and Ishizaki pulled through, providing Ichino's with 1,000 times better option and saved her. Now talking about the then Class D. Like with Class A, they had early on decided who would be expelled, the dethroned Ryuan. Although we as readers know how smart Ryuan's moves were and how close they came to whining, to his classmates he took one loss after another, and on top of that he terrorized them. So it wasn't a tough decision. Ryuan also accepted his fate and hung out in libraries sometimes with Hiyori and spent his day in solace while Ibuki and Ishizaki scratched their head on how to save him from this predicament. Ibuki was quite the tsunere towards the whole deal, while Ishizaki, a loyal follower of Ryuan, couldn't openly act on the task of saving Ryuan from all the votes that would be cast against him. Of course, Albert, who was also a loyal follower of Ryuan, didn't want him to be expelled, but he didn't do anything because he doesn't talk much, I guess. I don't know his deal. There was also Hiyori, who realized the importance of keeping Ryuan in their class. Without him they had no way to compete with the other classes. Plus she didn't really had anything against Ryuan except being a little opposed towards his dirty tactics. Only a little though, since she never actually bothered to directly oppose him. She did mention that she wanted Ryuan to stay to Ayankoji, who had dropped into the library to get information about Ryuan's matter. Discovering along the way that maybe, he did actually care a bit about Ryuan dropping out of this school. Ishizaki was the one who decided to take a direct action to prevent Ryuan's expulsion and decided to ask Ayankoji for help, since he had personally experienced how much of a big brain he is. He also took Ibuki with him for backup of sort. Someone who was at least moderately smart. But Ayankoji has been rejecting people's plea for help for a long time now. So he didn't directly tell them a solution but decided to give them advice which could save them in future. He told them to transfer Ryuan's points that he had earned through the contract with Classic to themselves. Ishizaki and Ibuki were quite opposed to it. In fact, Ibuki had rejected an offer like that from Ryuan back when he almost decided to drop out. But that's all Ayankoji had to offer. And gradually they figured out that they should heed his advice, but Ishizaki didn't want to do such a thing, so it was left up to Ibuki. When Ibuki visited Ryuan there was some light flirting, but the thing was that Ryuan had been expecting a visit like that. Moreover, he hadn't spent much points and transferred the 4 million points onto Ibuki's phone. Ibuki seemed to have noticed in their meeting in his room that Ryuan wasn't satisfied with leaving things this way. After all, with the way things were going, he would have to go out of this school with a big lose attached to his face forever. Ibuki messaged Ayankoji about the transfer of points, and then Ayankoji called Ibuki and Ishizaki into his room, much to their surprise. He also told them that he could save Ryuan. And Ibuki chose to expel Minaba in his place, and to do that they used Hiyori's influence among Class D. And when the time came to reveal the trick to save Ryuan, Ayankoji made a deal with Ichino's, which was basically 2 birds with 1 stone. Now let's talk about our main class of interest. For them things were tough cause they were the most divided out of all the classes. Moreover, leaders like Harada were unable to arrive at a solution. Horikita on the other hand acted like she had a solid plan, which was later shown to be just empty confidence when she talked with Ryuan. She first approached Ryuan with the intention of asking him how he was gonna tackle the exam, secretly hoping to get a clue about how to handle this exam. But Ryuan saw through this, and then he pointed out something that was starting to become more and more obvious from the previous volumes: she had grown soft. Unlike in the first volume where she had literally abandoned Pseudo and the other after the study session, deeming them better of getting expelled, until Ayankoji convinced her not to. Now, after spending more and more time with her class, bonding with Pseudo, acting nice towards Kushids to win her over, she couldn't let go of any of her classmates, hence it was disadvantageous for her. That was basically what Ryuan was saying, which kinda is right, because I honestly can't imagine that Horikita would have been able to gun for Yamuchi if he hadn't been doing something bad like colluding with Sakyangi. But she did actively search for an answer and would have at least been more decisive to expel someone than Ichino's and Harada. Ayankoji at first casually spent his time talking with a Ayankoji group, discussing who to vote for and casting each other praise votes. He even met up with Horikita Manabu and they raised an interesting flag. But when a rather nervous Kei informed him that the target of half of the class's votes was Ayankoji, he did make his moves. Talking to Kushida, who acted smart and mighty towards the wrong person. To Kushida, when Yamuchi approached her, she must have been really happy. Cause after realizing that Sakyongi was the one behind it, she could safely get rid of Ayonkoji. Moreover, after helping Sakyongi, she could form a relationship and then plot together with her. Of course, she was too dumb to realize that Ayonkoji could turn the situation around easily. Ayonkoji did gather information from Kushida, then relayed the identity of the mastermind to Manabu, who later gave it to Suzune along with a speech that increased her morale. And then, with all the information she had been given, she revealed the truth to the class, something that Ayonkoji mentioned that he could do himself if she couldn't. The speech was good, almost everyone was convinced to cast their censure vote for Yamuchi. Even Kushida got what was coming for her, and to protect herself she had to shed fake tears. Even Kuenji was impressed and supported her. But Hirata was different. With his past of not being able to help his bullied friend, he had issues with anything that would cause disruption in the class. And regardless if someone was in right or wrong, Hirata couldn't handle any disruption that would break the peace of the class. You have to understand, Hirata didn't feel bad or sympathetic towards Yamuchi, neither did he feel compassionate towards Horikita or even Ayonkoji, who was the victim. He had always thought of everyone as equal, not playing any favorism of any sort, so when he spoke against Horikita, he wasn't standing up for Yamuchi. He was just tired of all these friends that he regarded as strangers fight to get each other out. And then sides were formed, those who would vote against Ayonkoji and those who would vote against Yamuchi. Sudo sided with Yamuchi, since he said they were friends, and although for a very little moment, he did speak against Horikita for the sake of his friends. Which was understandable, as Horikita had said. Although it also shows how Horikita thinks of Sudo, she does regard him as better than the idiot trio, and now more than ever couldn't get rid of him. But also someone whose opinion didn't matter much in the schemes of the class. The Ayonkoji group sided with Ayonkoji and were furious on his behalf. Ayonkoji also had some small talk with Hirata, cleverly putting himself in a good light, unlike Horikita and Yamuchi, who had came to talk to him beforehand. He also predicted Hirata's course of action and sent a picture of Hirata to Kei with instructions to send it to all the people in the class so as to not take his words seriously when he offers himself as a target for their votes. And the thing was that before the results of the class votes were being announced, Horikita asked Ayonkoji if he really not done anything in this exam. And then when the results came, putting Ayonkoji in the first place, Horikita was very shocked. In fact, in her short story, she recalls her chat with her brother where he said that she could never surpass Ayonkoji. And at that moment she did feel like that. In fact, when she chased after him once the class ended, she felt the distance between them even more, as she realized he had been the one to give the identity of the mastermind to her brother. In a way, manipulating her moves. And then she had a very weird chat with Kei, in which they both talked more openly than ever, seemingly knowing everything about each other even though they don't. It was a very weird short chat, which has never been mentioned again afterwards. Yamuchi got expelled, and Kuenji, either intentionally or not, managed to concentrate his anger on him and him alone. Otherwise I am sure Yamuchi would have took shots on all his classmates. Hirata was left of worse too, also angry with Kuenji, and after seeing Yamuchi get expelled, something in him broke, and just as easily he had treated everyone as friends, he treated them all as strangers. The other result was Kushida's decline in popularity. It wasn't really much, but she did lose a bit of her classmates' trust. Moreover, the weird thing is how Horikita had once mentioned that Kushida had the most social skills in the whole school, which is kinda not true, I think. Cause Ichino's has her completely beat in that aspect. The only thing Kushida is superior in is that she won't shy away from exposing others' secrets. Another change in character came from Ryuin and Katsuragi, where Katsuragi had his spirit broken whereas Ryuin's spirit was reignited. He kind of felt grateful towards Ibuki and Ishizaki and even Ayonkoji. His obsession with Ayonkoji is getting increasingly healthy, sort of like sportsmanship building up between them. Ryuin has set Ayonkoji as his final goal to beat and feels the need to improve himself. And Sakyongi did as she had foreshadowed, casting Class A's praise vote for Ayonkoji. He had also seen through her and predicted this happening. In fact, to such a degree had he seen through that he had realized that she would expel Yahiko and not Katsuragi. And as Sakyongi talks with Ayonkoji, Tsukishiro shows his presence. Someone who has been sent by his father. And he was quite a jerk, swiping off Sakyongi's cane from under her was mess it up. He also attacked Ayonkoji, who didn't offer any defense cause he was sure that the camera was still recording. And after Tsukishiro was done threatening and choking Ayonkoji, he left and Ayonkoji mentioned to Sakyongi that he was quite used to being in such a position. Which tells us a lot more about the kind of place the White Room is. And Ayonkoji also raised Sakyongi's spirit by taking her competition seriously, at least on the surface. Also another thing to be worth of notice in this volume is that Ayonkoji tried to make Kei's impression towards him improve. When Manabe's expulsion was mentioned, he thought to himself that her expulsion would make him appear even greater to Kei, which is opposite of what he has been trying to do to all the other people. It might just be to increase her dependency on him, but it could just be something more.